Ask Reddit by Stirthaput 42069. If your child went on a hunger strike because they only wanted to eat fast food, highly processed foods, how would you handle that scenario? My sister tried this once. My mom and dad told her to go hungry. She didn't even make it a day before eating toast. She has no food allergies nor is she sensitive to anything. Just to throw this out there. If someone does this, it's likely about feeling they have no control. I'd get them involved with cooking. We'd look through a cookbook, I'd make them pick a recipe, then we'd go buy the ingredients, and they would be part of the actual cooking. Age appropriately, of course. This is what was done with me at a very, very young age. I wasn't picky, but it's how I learned to be curious about food. Cooking is what made me less of a picky eater. I wouldn't eat meat until I was about 10 or 11 years old. Throughout my teens I still would never try anything new practically. Then I got a job in a kitchen, and my passion for cooking new recipes made trying new things all the more exciting. I'm still a bit picky, but really only for things that viscerally gross me out. Call their bluff until it was clear they need professional help. As someone who refused to eat anything but very specific unhealthy foods as a child, and would starve myself otherwise, this is the right course of action. They won't actually starve if they miss a few meals. Every pediatrician tells us that. I babysat my nephew that had never had home cooked food in his life and refused to eat. I said okay and fed my kids. He said, "When are we going to get my food?" I pointed to the pot and said, "That's your food, you said you didn't want it." Took 3 days. 4th day he tried it. By day 8 he was munching down with the other kids like there was never a problem. I was never mean or threatening. He never threw a tantrum, but if he had, it wouldn't have helped. He never had home cooked food. Sorry, I feel bad for that kid. At least you helped. Deleted. You have the correct response. First rule out any reasons for the pickiness and then play hardball. Never the other way around. I read an interesting thing recently. It said one reason kids in many cultures willingly eat things that kids in the US would never try is because parents don't give them their own plates. The kids just sit next to the parents and eat from the parents' meal until they are full. Watching the parents and eating the food together makes them feel better about it. Now that I think about it, maybe this is an evolutionary adaptation. It would make sense for evolution to encourage kids to eat things that they see others in the group eating, and vice versa discourage them from eating untested things. Wow, I'm Canadian now, but I grew up in the Philippines. I had no idea that this was a thing. People always wondered how come my kids eat so well, and I guess subconsciously I would feed them from my plate because that's what I grew up seeing my parents do with us as well. Very, very interesting. Thank you for sharing this. Also, I wonder if evolutionarily these kids are high-key making sure they're not eating poison by making their parents eat the served food first. Eat them. There is an old Italian saying that translates to, "Better to have pigs than kids, because at least you can eat the pigs." I don't actually have advice, but I'm reading the answers because I have a 3-year-old that's getting picky. Looking for advice too. Father to 4 kids. When the kids would look at stuff like sushi or Brussels sprouts and ask what's that, we would tell them, "Oh, that's not for kids. That's grown-up food," and they would then beg us to try it. Well, just this once. Worked for us. You just have to fight the urge not to laugh. Lol. Edit. Wow, this sorta blew up, didn't it? Related story. Wife took the kids to the National Zoo in DC, after which they stopped for dinner at a small Chinese restaurant. 5-year-old daughter ordered the sushi lover's platter. Owner chef brought out the platter and was shocked at my daughter's age. He was very friendly, sat and talked with us for a few minutes and gave her a special rubber stamp award on the back of her hand for being so adventurous in her menu choice. She ate up the attention and the sushi. Okay. You'll get hungry eventually. Kids tend to give up pretty quick. Odds are, they won't even last through lunch the next day, which will, of course, be whatever supper was the night before. When mine was 18 months, he'd happily starve rather than eat something he didn't like. Then he'd vomit. Family thing. His sisters also threw up due to hunger, IDKY, so he'd get a slice of dry brown bread to go to bed with. Given the physical damage prolonged vomiting can cause over time, it wasn't worth the battle. Especially since it was a stomach bug that caused the pickiness to begin with. Took a long time to get him fairly normal. Peer pressure at school helped. Patience by the bucket and a very flexible food budget. Oddly, he wouldn't eat chicken until I told him it used to be a bird. Kept asking me, yes, but what is it, Dad? Worked out he liked to know what he was eating. He now helps cook most meals and is getting quite adept. Too young to be left alone to cook, but he knows how to follow a recipe. Just keep leaving out proper foods, fruit, veggies, cheese, things easy to grab but are ready for them. They will get hungry and give in. This was me when my parents divorced when I was 3. Would only eat chicken nuggets from McD's. Definitely ended up in therapy over it. Have since realized it was me controlling what I could in my life at that age. My son would come through the door and ask what was for dinner. If he did not like it, he say, I am having skip. Nothing but water until breakfast. At least once or twice a week until he got over being a picky eater. Giving him the autonomy to simply choose skipping a meal is a far healthier way to overcome food aversions than the way my dad handled it, by forcing every bite of the unliked food to be eaten before leaving the table. Kudos to your progressive parenting and breaking generational curses. Edit, typo. I remind my children we both have jobs when it comes to food eating. My job as your parent is to decide what to serve and amp, when. Your job as kid is to decide what to eat and amp, how much. I will do my job of deciding what and amp, when and amp. I trust them to do their job. I have also found that if I include my children in meal planning, what ideas do we have for dinner this week? We sit down as a family and amp, discuss dinner ideas and amp, why if what we will have. Then we discuss lunch requests and amp, breakfast requests. Request doesn't mean that it is going to happen. I try to make sure I throw something out that my husband vetoes says no so they don't feel like I am always vetoing their ideas and amp. It's a shared decision making house. Love this when I see it. Teaches good authority handling, conflict and negotiation skills. I've always told my son that he may not like certain foods as a kid, but keep an open mind and try them when you're older. He loves the YouTube and I honestly think watching other kids cook, taste crazy stuff and watching certain things being cooked encourages him to try stuff out. I worried because my ex was a man-child and ate like a picky toddler. You got McDonald's money? No? Well yeah, you can save up for it, but in the meantime you're going to get hungry. I provide 3 meals a day, plus snacks, and you have the willpower of a goldfish. My kids do this occasionally. I tell them they're allowed to hunger strike as long as it doesn't affect me. Once it does, they're sitting down at the table until they eat something of nutritional value. I also warn them that if they want to enjoy the sweets or fun foods, they'll eat the regular food too, or I won't be getting any more fun foods until I can trust them to eat regular food. I had a fat shaming almond mom, so sweets and processed foods were usually forbidden or, if given, heavily guiltified. I try not to do that to my kids and instead talk about why our bodies need a variety of foods for different things for healthy bodies. We also talk about how not every meal has to be the best meal ever. If it tastes okay, and you're hungry, eat. I'm a fairly decent cook, so we talk about even if they aren't thrilled, it's usually not the worst thing they've ever eaten. My kid is like this. I told him he doesn't have to eat if he's not hungry, but if he was he could join us. Tonight he threw a big fit because he didn't want to eat chicken, vegetables, and fresh fruit. 5 minutes into dinner after saying he wasn't hungry he ate grilled chicken that he dipped into BBQ sauce with a side of pineapple. I always make sure to have lots of things for him to pick from at dinner. We had chicken, asparagus, mashed sweet potatoes, pineapple, strawberries, and kiwi. Sit down with them and try to find out why. Then go from there. ARFID is an ED that can start early and seems like quite a few only eat fast, highly processed due to the dependability of texture taste. That's a good point. There can be more reasons not to eat than simply because they are picky. One of the reasons could perhaps be some sort of allergy or hypersensitivity to certain tastes and textures. Not claiming I really know what I'm talking about here, but anecdotally, picky eaters are usually people who are off-put by textures. Get a stick blender. A kid who won't eat a chunky spaghetti sauce often will if you blitz it smooth. But you have to be diligent. Really get it smooth, because they'll be deep examining their food as they eat it, and if they find even one errant chunk, you're back to square one. This was me. My mom wasn't interested in all that though, so I ate spaghetti with butter for years. Don't eat dinner tonight then. My son is autistic and this can happen often to him. Processed packaged foods will always be predictable and the same every time. Homemade and fresh foods can be different flavors and textures within the same meal. The way I choose to handle it is balance his plate. I give him some of we are eating with the requirement of one bite while also putting some of the safe foods on his plate. It's small portions of the safe foods but just enough that he can feel more comfortable knowing he will always have a food he knows. It works more times than not. Most of the time he ends up eating more than one bite of the home cooked food while also having a few crackers or maybe 2 chicken nuggets. He's also 3 and we are working closely with his therapies and a nutritionist to work toward a better palate. I'd get them into the kitchen to help with meal prep. This is a well-known thing that the more involved the kids are with preparing the meal, the more open they are to initiating eating it. I dealt with something like this with my nieces. My sister caved into them daily. I didn't and they ate what I fixed. If they didn't, I put it in the fridge. They were going to eat junk food instead and I stopped them and said, if you want to eat, your food is in there. After about a half hour they suddenly decided they would eat what I made without complaint. Unless you are the world's worst cook, they will eat what you fix. If you keep giving in, they only get worse. The list of things they don't like or don't want to do grows. I'd avoid making them eat. Let them pick out their own healthier option. Kids like to have an option, makes them feel special. I never bought my kids fast foods to begin with, so they never even ask for it, but they are still picky. 3 nights a week we eat bean burritos or pasta sides. It sucks having to cook separate for them, but at least it's not fast food. I know from experience that forcing someone to eat what you eat can lead to hating the food even more. My dad would yell at us and even thrown plates at me for not eating the food cooked. Still to this day will not eat rice because of it. I make trays of healthy finger foods, like party trays, for them to graze. Meats, cheeses, nuts, fruits, veggies, and a dip like hummus or just ranch. That way they feel like they have lots of options. There are none of the rules and regulations of sitting still at a table and following all the rules and etiquette, and they can eat as slow or fast as they are comfortable with. Here's the food. This is this, that is that. Sit with your children and enjoy your meals. Talk about everything except for the food, unless the child brings it up. And then just a quick comment. If the child says they don't like something, don't answer, change the subject. When we're done eating, we're going to read. Have your child choose one of 2 choices for the type of bread, both being healthy choices, or the kind of vegetables or fruit. Remember, there are only 2 choices of each. Say, which should we have? This or that? Start with just 1 choice per meal. Have the child help with cooking and cleaning up. Make it fun. Make food for other family members and or friends. It helps to have some good smelling food in the crock pot for supper. Do not drone on about eating or food. Just be very matter of fact. And for your child's sake, lay off the fast food. Source: 21 years as a family child care provider. I was one of those kids. I was told that's fine, you can just not eat. I went 3 days, then ate something else. I was a stubborn kid and wanted Doritos for breakfast. Props to mom for not giving in.